The movie opens with a massive explosion blasting apart a rocky cliff. Beneath the scorching sun, prisoners are forced to break giant boulders inside a brutal quarry. One of those prisoners is John Rambo. After hours of swinging a sledgehammer, a guard suddenly orders him to stop. Someone has come to see him. The former Special Forces soldier, now worn down by years of hard labor, silently sets the hammer aside and follows the guard. Waiting behind the fence is a familiar face. Colonel Troutman, the man who once commanded Rambo during the Vietnam War. After everything that happened, Rambo surrendered to the authorities and avoided a death sentence. Ever since then, Troutman has been searching for a way to get his best soldier out of prison. Now that opportunity has finally arrived. Troutman asks the guard to give them a moment alone. He tells Rambo that the government needs him once again. There are still American POWs believed to be alive in Vietnam, and they're being held in the very same prison camp Rambo once escaped from. No one knows that jungle better than he does, which makes him the perfect man for the job. His mission is simple: infiltrate the camp and confirm whether any American prisoners are still alive. As always, Rambo doesn't have much to say. Long ago, he stopped believing in patriotic speeches, and returning to the place where he was tortured is the last thing he wants. On the other hand, spending another 5 years breaking rocks in prison doesn't sound very appealing either. Troutman knows exactly what will convince him. If Rambo completes the mission and survives, he'll be temporarily reinstated into the army and receive a full presidential pardon. Rambo quietly weighs his option. His old unit is gone. His friends are dead. He has no family waiting for him. To someone who's lost everything, what does freedom even mean? But maybe rescuing soldiers who were abandoned just like he was will finally give his life a purpose again. Without another word, Rambo accepts the mission. Troutman tells him their next meeting will be in Thailand, where the operation will begin. As the colonel starts to leave, Rambo stops him with one question. Whether this mission succeeds depends entirely on him. Not long afterward, Rambo arrives at a U.S. military base in Thailand. At the helipad, he's greeted by a cheerful pilot named Erickson, who proudly tells Rambo it's an honor to work with him. Together, they head inside, where Colonel Troutman introduces him to Marshal Murdoch, the man in charge of the operation. Murdoch studies Rambo carefully. His service record is legendary. His medals speak for themselves. But after the incident with the police, can he still follow orders? Trying to earn Rambo's trust, Murdoch claims he also served in Vietnam. He even gives the number of his battalion and talks about the good men he supposedly lost there. According to military intelligence, nearly 2,500 Americans are still officially listed as missing in action. Their families deserve to know the truth, whether they're alive or not. Rambo's objective couldn't be clearer. Sneak into the enemy camp, take photographs proving the prisoners are there, and leave. No firefights, no rescue attempts, no heroics, just pictures. The political situation has changed, and the government needs undeniable proof before launching any military operation. If Rambo returns with that evidence, Troutman's team will move in and rescue the prisoners. At least, that's what they're telling him. Rambo says nothing, but it's obvious he hates the idea of leaving American soldiers behind. The mission may be reconnaissance. His instincts say otherwise. Later, Troutman walks him through the full operation. First, Rambo will parachute into enemy territory. Unlike his previous missions, this time he's carrying far more equipment than usual. Troutman even jokes that Rambo should actually use it, because muscles, knives, and pure stubbornness won't be enough this time. Rambo is then shown the operations command center. It's packed with cutting-edge military technology designed to support him from afar. Once on the ground, he'll rendezvous with a local contact named Kobao. Murdoch confidently assures everyone that everything has been planned perfectly. Rambo isn't convinced. Quietly, he mutters that nothing in Vietnam ever goes according to plan. Hearing that, Murdoch suddenly looks a little less confident. He pulls Troutman aside, clearly worried. Troutman simply smiles. If there's one man capable of pulling off the impossible, it's John Rambo. Troutman calls him the finest soldier to come out of the Vietnam War. One man capable of matching an entire army. A soldier determined to finish the war others failed to win. And if necessary, a man willing to give his life without hesitation. Before deployment, Rambo sharpens his trusted survival knife, checks his rifle, and carefully packs several explosive arrowheads. Troutman wishes him good luck. He has exactly 36 hours to complete the mission before reaching the extraction point. Just before leaving, Rambo quietly tells the colonel something interesting. Murdoch lied. The battalion he claimed to have served with was stationed somewhere completely different. In other words, he never fought where he said he did. Rambo makes one thing perfectly clear. The only person he trusts is Troutman. Soon, Erickson lifts the aircraft into the night sky. Below, Murdoch and Troutman watch it disappear into the darkness. Murdoch casually remarks that Rambo probably won't find any prisoners anyway. The real mission isn't about saving soldiers. It's about calming public opinion. Rambo, however, intends to prove him completely wrong. When the aircraft reaches the drop zone, Rambo jumps into the darkness. Almost immediately, disaster strikes. His parachute becomes tangled on the plane. Instead of descending, he's dragged behind the aircraft. With the engine only seconds away, everyone aboard panic. Murdoch immediately suggests aborting the mission, but Rambo has other ideas. Using nothing but his combat knife, he cuts himself free. His heavy equipment crashes into the jungle below. Nearly everything he brought is gone. Even so, Rambo survives the fall and disappears into the darkness. Now completely off the radar, trying to cover himself, Murdoch insists they pretend nothing happened and cancel the extraction. Troutman refuses. He convinces him to stick to the original plan and wait at the extraction point. Meanwhile, Rambo gets back on his feet. He's lost almost all his gear, but not his determination. Armed with little more than his knives, his bow, and a handful of arrows, Rambo heads deeper into enemy territory. He moves silently through the dense jungle, slipping beneath branches, avoiding snakes, and navigating with only his compass. Eventually, he reaches the designated rendezvous point. There, he spots someone wearing a traditional Vietnamese hat. Taking no chances, Rambo sneaks up from behind and quickly takes the person hostage. Only then does he realize it's a woman. Her name is Ko Bao, the local agent assigned to help him. She leads him to a nearby river and delivers some disappointing news. The prison camp has supposedly been abandoned for quite some time, meaning his exhausting journey may have been for nothing. Still, there might be one last lead. The two travel to a small pirate outpost. The locals there know the river better than anyone and can move through the area without attracting too much attention. The exchange goes smoothly. Money changes hands, and before long, they're sailing upriver. Curious, Rambo asks how the pirates deal with military patrol boats. Instead of answering, the pirate leader simply holds up a Soviet-made rocket launcher. Message received. As the boat continues through the jungle, Ko Bao becomes curious about Rambo. Why would anyone willingly return to Vietnam? Rambo doesn't answer right away. Some memories are harder to talk about than others. Rambo finally opens up. After returning to America, he realized the war never truly ended. The battlefield just changed. At least in combat, he says, he felt free. Ko Bao then shares her own story. After her father died, she took his place in the intelligence network. But she's tired of living surrounded by war and death. Her dream is simple. One day, she wants to move to America and live a peaceful life. She can't understand why Rambo keeps choosing a life filled with danger. His answer is painfully honest. He's expendable. If he doesn't show up somewhere, no one even notices. Ko Bao gently holds the lucky charm hanging from her necklace. Rambo smiles faintly and shows her his version of a lucky charm, his combat knife. Meanwhile, Troutman wants to move toward the extraction point, convinced Rambo will make it. Murdoch tries to stop him. He clearly has no interest in whether the soldiers survive or not. But Troutman refuses to back down. After some arguing, he finally gets permission to proceed. That night, Rambo and Ko Bao reach the prison camp. Everything appears abandoned, almost too quiet. As they carefully observe the area, they notice a woman arriving to visit the guards. Using the distraction, Rambo quietly prepares his bow and gets ready to slip inside. Ko Bao immediately tries to stop him. She reminds him that his mission is only to take photographs. But Rambo has already made up his mind. Ignoring his orders, he cuts through the barbed wire fence and disappears into the shadows. The camp looks deserted, but something doesn't feel right. Crossing a narrow stream, Rambo suddenly hears faint groans coming from one of the huts. Inside, he discovers the truth. American POWs are still there. Dozens of them are crammed into filthy cages, starving, sick, and barely alive. Rats crawl freely across the floor. Outside, Rambo finds one prisoner tied to wooden posts like a scarecrow. His name is Banks. Rambo quietly cuts him loose. The two begin sneaking out of the camp. As they approach a bridge, one Vietnamese guard unexpectedly walks straight toward them. Rambo reacts instantly. One perfectly thrown knife. One silent takedown. Moments later, another guard sweeps the area with a flashlight. Before he can raise the alarm, an arrow flies out of the darkness. Ko Bao nearly gets caught as well, but the soldier reaching for her never gets the chance to call for help. Another arrow. Another silent elimination. Now traveling as a group of 3, they escape the camp. Before leaving, Rambo promises the remaining prisoners one thing. He'll come back for them. The following morning, Vietnamese soldiers discover the bodies and immediately begin searching for the escapees. Banks is exhausted and can barely walk. The group stops briefly so he can recover. He tells Rambo that his arrival couldn't have been better timed. The prisoners are constantly being transferred from camp to camp and forced into hard labor. Then Rambo reveals something that leaves Banks speechless. The Vietnam War officially ended 10 years ago. Banks can't believe it. None of the prisoners had any idea so much time had passed. Eventually, they reach the river and reunite with the pirates. Only 2 kilometers remain before the extraction point, where Troutman and Erickson are already waiting. Unfortunately, Vietnamese forces intercept one of the radio transmissions. Within minutes, a patrol boat is dispatched to cut them off. Just as the enemy vessel appears, the pirates reveal their true colors. Money talks. They seize Rambo's weapons, planning to hand him over for the reward. Big mistake. Rambo reacts in an instant. Using the push daggers hidden on his body, he kills the pirate holding him. He grabs a rifle and quickly turns the tables, eliminating the remaining traitors. Realizing the patrol boat is almost on top of them, Rambo orders everyone into the water. Seconds later, heavy machine gun fire tears across the boat. Rambo lands hard on the patrol boat's deck after making a daring leap. Death misses him by inches. Spotting the Soviet rocket launcher, he picks it up without hesitation. One shot, direct hit. The patrol boat erupts into flames. Even burning, however, the enemy vessel keeps charging straight toward them. Meanwhile, the last surviving pirate wraps Rambo in a chokehold. After a desperate struggle, Rambo finally frees himself using his combat knife. With only seconds to spare, he dives into the river just before the burning patrol boat crashes into the pirate vessel. Moments later, he reunites with Kobau and Banks on shore. Together, they disappear back into the jungle. As they near the extraction point, Rambo pauses for a brief goodbye. Kobau asks him to stop thinking of himself as expendable. She wants him to believe his life has value. Before either of them can say anything else, mortar shells begin exploding across the rice field. They've been spotted. Rambo grabs the weakened Banks and drags him toward the extraction zone through sheer determination. Above them, Troutman and Erickson finally spot the group from the helicopter. Rambo desperately waves them down. For a brief moment, it looks like they're going to make it. Back at the command center, Murdoch receives the update. Rambo has found a live American prisoner. The color immediately drains from his face. He clears everyone out of the room, locks the doors, and orders Erickson to abort the rescue immediately. Return to base. Troutman is furious. He argues. He protests. But armed soldiers point their rifles at him, leaving him powerless to stop it. Helplessly, he watches as the helicopter turns away and disappears into the distance. On the ground, Rambo stares in disbelief. The rescue helicopter just abandoned them. Surrounded by enemy troops with nowhere left to run, Rambo and Banks are captured. Hidden among the trees, Kobau watches in horror as both men are taken away. Back at the base, Troutman completely loses his patience. He calls Murdoch exactly what he is, a traitor. It was all a lie, wasn't it? Just like the whole damn war. Murdoch doesn't even try to deny it. Instead, he coldly tells Troutman that he should have known better, which makes him just as responsible. The entire operation was a sham from the very beginning. The government never cared about rescuing the prisoners. Its only concern was calming public outrage. Rambo was never supposed to return with proof, but he ignored his orders, and now he's paying the price. Troutman understands exactly what's really happening. This has nothing to do with strategy. It's about politics and money. Vietnam refused to release the American POWs after the United States declined to pay war reparations. Murdoch insists paying that money would have strengthened governments hostile to America's allies. And if living American prisoners suddenly appeared on television, the political consequences could be enormous. Troutman has heard enough. He calls Murdoch a bastard and storms out. Murdoch warns him not to interfere. Trying to save Rambo would be a terrible mistake. Troutman calmly turns back and replies, "The biggest mistake has already been made." "What mistake?" Murdoch asks. Troutman's answer is only one word: Rambo. Meanwhile, Rambo is enduring unimaginable torture. He's buried up to his neck in a filthy pit filled with waste. Leeches cover his body. Heavy iron shackles bind his arms. Nearby, Banks has been thrown back into a bamboo cage with the other American prisoner. Before long, a Soviet helicopter lands inside the camp. Stepping out is Lieutenant Colonel Podovsky. He orders the guards to clean Rambo up and bring him in for questioning. Even after everything he's endured, Rambo refuses to say a single word. Podovsky introduces his brutal associate, Sergeant Yushin. Without hesitation, Yushin thrusts Rambo's combat knife into a bed of glowing coals until the blade turns red hot. Podovsky takes a different approach. Calm, polite, almost friendly. He asks Rambo to contact his superiors and deliver a simple message. If the Americans continue sending spies, the consequences will only get worse. Rambo's response is immediate. He spits directly in Podovsky's face. Any chance of a peaceful conversation ends right there. Now, Yushin takes over. The guards hit Rambo with electric shocks, trying to break him. Still, he refuses to talk. Podovsky reads aloud the intercepted transmission. "Dragonfly, Wolf is dead. The message confirms what Rambo feared. Murdoch had already written him off and ordered the mission cancelled, leaving him to die in Vietnam. Another surge of electricity courses through his body. Rambo remains silent. At the same time, Ko Bao sneaks into the camp disguised as a comfort girl for the guards. She's escorted into one of the huts, and the moment the soldier lets his guard down, she quietly kills him and takes his weapon. Back in the interrogation room, Podofsky brings in Banks, hoping to use him as leverage. Yushin presses the red-hot knife against Rambo's face, burning a mark into his skin, then moves the glowing blade toward Banks's eye. But Banks shouts at Rambo not to give in. That's when Rambo finally speaks. He says he'll cooperate. The soldiers sit him in front of the radio. Rambo begins speaking in English, making it sound like he's surrendering and following their demands. Outside, Ko Bao hears his voice and immediately rushes toward the building. Back at the U.S. base, Murdoch and Troutman hear Rambo's voice crackling through the speakers. They ask for his status. Rambo's response is simple: put Murdoch on the line, and then everything explodes into chaos. Rambo suddenly grabs the microphone stand and attacks the guards. At the same moment, Ko Bao opens fire from below, spraying bullets through the floorboards. Rambo uses the torture device against Yushin, shocking him with his own machine, then smashes through the wall and retrieves his combat knife. The two fight their way out together, cutting down enemies as they run toward the perimeter fence. Rambo helps Ko Bao through the barbed wire, and moments later they vanish into the jungle. Helicopters, trucks, and soldiers are sent after them, but if there's one thing Rambo knows, it's how to disappear into the wilderness. Once again, the jungle becomes his territory. By morning, Ko Bao is treating Rambo's wounds. Rambo quietly thanks her for not abandoning him when everyone else did. I won't forget it. Now his plan is to cross into Thailand and finally leave Vietnam behind. Ko Bao asks him to take her to America with him. For a brief moment, they allow themselves to imagine a different future. They share a kiss. Unfortunately, the jungle has other plans. As they move forward, gunfire suddenly erupts from the trees. It's an ambush. Ko Bao is hit. Rambo instantly returns fire, tearing through the attackers in a fury, but one of the shooters manages to escape. Rambo desperately tries to save her, but the wound is too severe. Ko Bao dies in his arms. Back at the base, Troutman once again demands a rescue operation. When Murdoch refuses, the colonel threatens to go over his head. Murdoch's answer is immediate. He places Troutman under arrest. Meanwhile, deep in the jungle, Rambo ties Ko Bao's pendant around his neck and buries her beneath the trees. The mission has changed now. This isn't just about rescuing prisoners anymore. Now it's personal. Vietnamese and Soviet troops continue searching for him, but Rambo becomes almost impossible to find. He hides beneath thick vegetation, submerges himself underwater, and even covers his body in mud to ambush soldiers from inches away. Armed with only his knife and bow, he turns into a silent predator. Rambo begins hunting the enemy one squad at a time. He lures soldiers into traps, sets fields ablaze with fuel, and uses explosive arrows to wipe out entire groups. One by one, the men chasing him disappear into the jungle. Eventually, he finds the soldier responsible for Ko Bao's death. The man barely has time to react before an explosive arrow slams into him. A single shot. A massive explosion. Rambo's revenge is complete. Then a helicopter appears overhead. Yushin has returned. The Soviet drops a bomb, but Rambo dives into a nearby lake just before it detonates. The helicopter lowers altitude, trying to gun him down. And then Rambo does something completely insane. He bursts out of the water and climbs onto the helicopter. Inside the cockpit, Rambo and Yushin fight hand-to-hand as the helicopter swerves wildly through the air. Yushin grabs him by the throat, but the fight quickly turns. Rambo throws Yushin out of the aircraft and then forces the pilot out as well. Now in control of the helicopter, he heads straight for the POW camp. Rockets and machine gun fire rain down on the camp, destroying buildings, equipment, and guard position. When he lands, he finishes the remaining guards on foot and frees the prisoners. One prisoner is wounded during the escape, but Rambo eliminates the last Soviet soldier and gets the surviving Americans aboard the helicopter. For the first time, it looks like they might actually get out, but the fight isn't over yet. Colonel Podofsky launches after them in a heavily armed gunship. He unleashes everything he has. Rambo dodges through the sky, trying to avoid crashing into a nearby village. Then the gunship scores a direct hit. Rambo's helicopter is barely holding together. He manages to bring it down onto the shallow river water. Podofsky approaches slowly, seeing Rambo slumped over the controls and assuming he's finished. He prepares the final shot. Big mistake. Rambo suddenly rises up and fires a rocket launcher. The enemy helicopter explodes into a giant fireball, sending burning wreckage crashing into the jungle below. With his own aircraft heavily damaged, Rambo fights to keep it in the air and heads back toward the base. Over the radio, his voice finally comes through. Long Wolf calling Wolf Denver. The moment Murdoch hears him, panic takes over. He immediately flees the command center, Troutman takes charge and orders his men to prepare for incoming wounded. Rambo lands hard, but safely. Then, without even stopping to rest, he grabs an M60 machine gun and walks straight past Eric's. No words are needed. Troutman watches him go and already knows exactly where he's headed. Inside the operations center, Rambo opens fire. Bullets rip through expensive computers, control panels, and communication systems as sparks fly everywhere. The command center collapses into chaos. Then Rambo kicks open Murdoch's office door. The official desperately tries to explain himself, claiming he was only following orders from higher up. Rambo slams him against the wall and raises his knife. His hand shakes, not because he's afraid, but because he's fighting the urge to kill him. Murder would be easy. Fixing what's broken would not. Instead, Rambo looks him in the eye and growls that American soldiers are still rotting in foreign prison camps. He doesn't want excuses. He wants action. And he tells Murdoch to do something before it's too late for the others. Outside, medics care for the rescued prisoners while Troutman approaches Rambo and asks what he'll do now. Back home, they'll probably offer him another medal. Rambo says those medals don't belong to him. They belong to the men he brought back. He has no intention of returning to America. Instead, he plans to stay in Asia and figure out who he is now. Troutman urges him to come home, but Rambo keeps staring ahead. To him, there's nothing left there. When his brothers died in Vietnam, a part of him died with them. Troutman asks if he blames America for everything that happened. Rambo shakes his head. He says he'd still give his life for his country without hesitation. The only thing he ever wanted was what every soldier wants: respect, belonging, to feel that the sacrifice meant something. But sometimes that love only goes one way, and that's what hurts the most. As Rambo walks away, Troutman calls after him one last time. "How are you going to live now?" Rambo doesn't even turn around. He simply answers, "One day at a time."